Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Learn English with Podcast Conversation. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Thomas. In today's episode, we're diving into a topic that many English learners struggle with: how to speak English more confidently.
That's right. Speaking confidently is crucial for effective communication. Listening to podcasts like ours can improve your listening and communication skills, making it easier to express yourself clearly and confidently.
We'll share tips and strategies to help you build your confidence while speaking English. Let's get started.
So, Thomas, what does it really mean to speak confidently in English? We often tell learners to speak confidently, but what's behind that?
Good question, Jennifer. I believe speaking confidently means more than just speaking loudly or fluently. It's about believing in your ability to communicate effectively, even if you're not perfect. You don't need to have perfect grammar or pronunciation to be understood, and that's a key point learners should remember. Confidence is more about mindset.
Exactly. I also think that a lot of learners feel nervous because they focus too much on their mistakes. They worrying that people will judge them or they'll embarrass themselves. But the truth is, most people don't mind if you make a mistake. They appreciate the effort you're making to communicate.
That's such a great point. And, another part of confidence is preparation. The more you practice speaking, the more natural it becomes. Just like learning any skill, practice builds familiarity. Over time, your brain adapts to thinking and responding in English, which naturally makes you feel more comfortable.
Exactly. So, for our listeners, the takeaway here is that confidence doesn't come from speaking perfectly, but from speaking often and being okay with imperfection.
Practice is essential, isn't it? I always tell learners that speaking is like any other skill. The more you do it, the better you get. But there's another important side to this. It's not just about the quantity of practice, but the quality.
I agree. You need to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Practicing simple phrases is great at first, but eventually, you need to challenge yourself with more complex conversations. For example, instead of just saying hi, how are you? You could try discussing topics like your hobbies or plans for the weekend.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to practice in different situations. Try ordering food in English, talking to someone on the phone, or even describing your day to yourself. It's important to vary the types of conversations you're having because that's what builds your versatility.
That's a great tip. I would also say that practicing with a native speaker, if possible, can be incredibly helpful. They can give you real-time feedback on your speaking, and you'll learn things like tone and phrasing, which might be harder to pick up from textbooks.
Yes, and don't forget to record yourself speaking sometimes. Listening back to your own voice can help you identify areas where you can improve, and it's also a great confidence booster when you notice how much progress you've made.
One of the biggest challenges when speaking English is the fear of making mistakes, right? Learners often hesitate because they think, what if I say something wrong? But mistakes are actually a huge part of learning, don't you think?
Absolutely, Jennifer. In fact, I'd say that making mistakes is probably one of the best ways to improve. Every time you make a mistake, it's an opportunity to learn something new. And if you keep speaking, you'll realize that mistakes aren't a big deal. Most people are really understanding and will even help correct you in a friendly way.
Exactly. I always encourage my students to just speak without worrying too much. You're never going to get better if you're too scared to try. I remember one of my students was so afraid to say anything in class. But once she started talking, even with small mistakes, her confidence grew so much.
That's a great example. I've had similar experiences too. I think another important point is to learn from your mistakes. Don't just ignore them, try to figure out what went wrong and how you can correct it next time. But also, don't dwell on them too much. Learning is a gradual process.
That's true. It's all about balance. Accept the mistakes, learn from them, and then move forward. Confidence comes from knowing that mistakes are normal and part of the journey.
Jennifer, have you ever recommended positive affirmations to your students? I've found that these can be really powerful for boosting confidence, not just in language learning, but in all areas of life.
Yes, I love positive affirmations. It's such a simple, yet effective tool. When you tell yourself things like, I'm improving every day, or I'm confident in my English skills, it really helps shift your mindset. Sometimes just believing in yourself can make a huge difference in how you approach speaking.
Exactly. I think it's important to repeat these affirmations regularly, especially before speaking in English. It helps you stay calm and focused, and you'll be more likely to take risks, like starting a conversation or trying new words.
And it's not just about the language. It's about believing that you are capable. Once you start to believe that you can communicate in English, your confidence will naturally increase. I had a student who started saying affirmations daily, and in just a few months, I noticed how much more comfortable she was speaking.
That's such a great story. I always tell my students to celebrate their small victories, too. Even saying a few new sentences in English is something to be proud of. Affirmations can help you recognize those small steps as progress.
Another tip that I think is really helpful for building confidence is to speak slowly and clearly. Many learners feel they need to speak fast to sound fluent, but that can actually make things harder. What do you think, Thomas?
I agree completely. Speaking quickly can cause more mistakes, and you might even lose track of your thoughts. When you slow down, you have more time to think about what you want to say, and you can focus on pronunciation and clarity. It's better to speak slowly and clearly than to rush and confuse your listener.
Exactly. I always tell my students that it's okay to take a moment to think before speaking. In fact, many native speakers do the same thing. It gives you time to organize your thoughts and feel more confident about what you're going to say.
That's right. Pausing is natural. It's much better to have a slight pause than to rush through a sentence and make mistakes. Plus, when you speak slowly, the listener has more time to understand and follow your thoughts.
That's such a great point. So, listeners, don't be afraid to take your time when speaking English. It's not a race, and speaking clearly is more important than speaking quickly.
Jennifer, I always encourage my students to practice speaking English in everyday situations. It doesn't have to be in a formal classroom setting. What's your take on that?
I completely agree. In fact, I think real-world practice is one of the best ways to build confidence. Whether it's ordering food, asking for directions, or chatting with a colleague, everyday conversations help you use English naturally.
Absolutely. It's all about finding those small opportunities to use the language in real life. Even if it's just a quick interaction at a store or saying hello to someone, these moments add up and build confidence over time.
That's true. And the best part is, the more you practice in everyday situations, the more comfortable you become. You don't have to wait for a perfect moment to practice English. You can start with the simple things around you.
Exactly. The more you use English in these small ways, the easier it becomes to speak without overthinking. And soon enough, you'll feel confident even in more complex conversations.
One thing that helps a lot with confidence is learning vocabulary in context. Instead of memorizing words from a list, try to learn them through conversations or reading. What do you think, Thomas?
That's a great point, Jennifer. When you learn words in context, it's much easier to remember how to use them naturally. You understand the word's meaning, tone, and how it fits into a sentence. Plus, it's more engaging than just memorizing a list of words.
Exactly. And it's also more practical. You'll be able to use the words you learn in real-life situations right away. For example, if you learn new words related to food while grocery shopping, you'll likely remember them better because they're tied to that experience.
That's a great example. I also think that reading books or articles in English is a fantastic way to learn vocabulary in context. You get to see how words are used in different situations, and that builds both your vocabulary and your confidence in speaking. One thing that can really boost confidence is setting small, achievable goals for yourself. For example, aim to use 5 new words in a conversation or try to speak for 5 minutes without switching to your native language. What do you think, Jennifer?
That's a fantastic strategy, Thomas. When learners set small, manageable goals, it becomes easier to track progress. And each time you meet a goal, no matter how small, it gives you a sense of accomplishment, which boosts your confidence for the next challenge.
Exactly. It's important to celebrate those small wins. If you set a goal to introduce yourself in English to someone new and you do it, that's a victory. And over time, these small steps really add up, helping you build fluency and confidence.
Yes, and it also helps learners stay motivated. Sometimes, if you focus on a big goal like becoming fluent, it can feel overwhelming. But if you break that goal down into smaller steps, it feels more manageable and you can enjoy the learning process more.
Totally agree. So, listeners, don't be afraid to set small, specific goals and celebrate your progress along the way. Each step you take brings you closer to speaking English confidently.
Have you ever suggested that your students record themselves while practicing speaking, Thomas? I've found it to be such a useful tool for improving fluency and building confidence.
Yes, I have. Jennifer, recording yourself is a great way to track your progress over time. When you listen back, you can hear how much you've improved and also identify areas where you might want to focus more.
Exactly. I think many learners are surprised when they hear themselves speaking after a few months. They often don't realize how much they've improved because the progress can feel slow day to day. But when you compare recordings, you can clearly hear the difference.
And it's also a good way to practice speaking under less pressure. You can record yourself without worrying about mistakes, and then listen back to see what went well and what could be improved. It's like having your own personal speaking coach.
Yes, it's a confidence booster to hear yourself improving, and it also helps you become more comfortable with your own voice in English. So, listeners, try recording yourselves and listening back to see how far you've come.
Another way to gain confidence is by joining English conversation groups. These groups offer a supportive environment where you can practice speaking with others who are also learning. What do you think about that, Jennifer?
I think conversation groups are an excellent idea, Thomas. They give learners a safe space to practice and make mistakes without feeling judged. Plus, it's a great way to meet people and build a community of English learners. It's less intimidating than speaking with native speakers at first.
That's true. And in these groups, everyone understands what it's like to be learning a language, so there's a lot of patience and encouragement. You can practice different topics, ask questions, and learn from each other's experiences.
Absolutely. I've noticed that when learners practice with others who are at a similar level, it often boosts their confidence more quickly. They feel more comfortable experimenting with new vocabulary or sentence structures. And the best part is, you get real-time feedback from your peers.
Exactly. So listeners, if you haven't already, consider joining an English conversation group. It's a fun and supportive way to practice your speaking skills and build confidence.
Thomas, do you recommend reading aloud as a way to practice speaking and build confidence? I've found it to be really helpful for learners who are a bit shy about speaking at first.
Definitely. Jennifer, reading aloud is a fantastic way to practice pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm without the pressure of a conversation. It allows learners to focus on how the words sound, and it's a great exercise for fluency.
Exactly. I always suggest that learners pick a book or article they enjoy and read it out loud for a few minutes every day. It's a great way to get used to speaking English, even if you're just by yourself.
And it's also a great way to get familiar with the flow of the language. When you read aloud, you're training your mouth and brain to work together in English. Over time, this helps you speak more naturally and confidently in real conversations.
That's right. Plus, it's a good way to reinforce the vocabulary and grammar you've been learning. So, listeners, give it a try. Reading aloud is an easy and effective way to improve your speaking skills and build confidence.
One thing I often hear from learners is that they feel nervous when speaking English, especially in front of native speakers. What advice would you give to help them manage those nerves, Jennifer?
That's such a common issue, Thomas. I think the first step is to acknowledge that it's okay to feel nervous. It's natural when you're speaking a second language. But one way to manage those nerves is to focus on the message you're trying to communicate rather than on perfection.
Exactly. Focusing on communicating your ideas rather than worrying about every little mistake can really take the pressure off. And remember, most native speakers are very understanding and patient when someone is learning their language.
Yes, and another tip is to practice some deep breathing before speaking. It might sound simple, but calming your body helps calm your mind. When you feel more relaxed, it's easier to speak clearly and confidently.
That's a great point. I also think preparation can help reduce nerves. If you know you're going to have a conversation in English, try to practice a few phrases or think about what you want to say beforehand. It helps you feel more prepared and less anxious.
Absolutely. So listeners, remember that it's okay to feel nervous, but with practice and some relaxation techniques, you can speak more confidently in any situation.
Another great way to boost your speaking confidence is to find a language partner. Practicing with someone one-on-one can help reduce the pressure of speaking in larger groups. What do you think about that, Jennifer?
That's a fantastic idea, Thomas. A language partner gives you the opportunity to practice regularly with someone who's either learning English or already speaks it fluently. The best part is, you can take your time, ask questions, and correct each other's mistakes in a relaxed environment.
Exactly. And it's often less intimidating than speaking with a group or in front of native speakers. You can practice real-life conversations, which can help build your confidence for when you need to speak in more formal or larger settings.
And it's a win-win because if your partner is learning your native language, you both get to practice. Plus, you can share cultural insights, which makes the learning process even more enjoyable. Having that consistent practice with a supportive partner really boosts your confidence over time.
I couldn't agree more. So listeners, consider finding a language partner, either online or in person, to practice speaking regularly. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
Thomas, I've noticed that many learners worrying about speaking too slowly. They think they need to speak fast to sound fluent. Do you think focusing on speed is the right approach?
Actually, I don't think so. I believe that clarity is much more important than speed, especially when you're learning a new language. Speaking slowly and clearly ensures that your listener understands you, and that's what really matters in communication.
Exactly. When learners try to speak too quickly, they often make more mistakes or get flustered. But if you focus on being clear and taking your time, you'll actually sound more confident and natural. And as your fluency improves, your speed will naturally increase.
That's a great point, Jennifer. Fluency isn't just about speaking fast, it's about being able to express yourself clearly and comfortably. So, listeners, don't worry about speaking too slowly. It's better to be understood than to rush and get lost in the conversation.
Yes, focus on clarity first, and speed will come with practice. The more confident you feel in what you're saying, the smoother and faster your speech will become over time.
Jennifer, have you ever encouraged learners to use visual aids when they're trying to explain something in English? I think it's a great way to boost confidence, especially when giving presentations or explaining complex ideas.
Absolutely, Thomas. Visual aids can really enhance communication, and they're especially helpful when words might fail you. If you're giving a presentation or even just trying to explain something informally, having images, charts, or diagrams can help convey your message more clearly.
Exactly, and using visual aids can give learners an extra sense of security. If they get stuck on a word or phrase, they can point to a visual to help clarify their point. It takes some of the pressure off having to rely solely on verbal communication.
And it's not just for formal settings. Even in everyday conversations, if you're describing something like a place or a process, showing a picture on your phone or drawing a quick sketch can help make your explanation clearer and more engaging.
That's a great tip, Jennifer. So, listeners, don't hesitate to use visual aids whenever you can. They're an excellent way to boost your confidence and ensure your message is understood.
Thomas, I know many learners are afraid of making mistakes when they speak. They think it will make them look unprofessional or less intelligent. What's your take on that?
I understand the fear, but I always tell learners that making mistakes is a natural part of the learning process. It's actually a good sign. It means you're pushing yourself to speak more and learn from those mistakes. No one speaks a new language perfectly right away.
That's such an important point. Everyone makes mistakes when learning a language, even native speakers. The key is to learn from them and keep moving forward. I often remind my students that their main goal is communication, not perfection.
Exactly. And most people, especially native speakers, are very understanding when someone is learning their language. They don't expect you to be perfect, and they often appreciate your effort. So, listeners, don't let the fear of mistakes hold you back from speaking.
Yes, embrace the mistakes as part of the journey. Each mistake you make is an opportunity to improve. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become, and those mistakes will gradually decrease over time.
Jennifer, how important do you think it is for learners to celebrate their progress, even if it feels small?
It's incredibly important, Thomas. Celebrating small wins helps build confidence and keeps learners motivated. Sometimes progress can feel slow, but every little step forward is worth acknowledging. Whether it's successfully ordering food in English or having your first full conversation without hesitation, these are all achievements.
I completely agree. It's easy to focus on what you still need to learn, but taking a moment to recognize how far you've come is key. It boosts your confidence and reminds you that you're making progress, even if it doesn't always feel like it.
Absolutely. So, listeners, don't forget to celebrate the small victories along the way. Learning a language is a long journey, but each step forward brings you closer to your goal of speaking English confidently. Thomas, one thing that really helps learners gain confidence is expanding their vocabulary. But instead of just memorizing random words, I always suggest learning new words in context. What's your take on that?
I completely agree, Jennifer. When you learn vocabulary in context, such as in a sentence or as part of a story, it becomes much easier to remember and use the word correctly. You understand how it's applied in real-life situations, which boosts both your comprehension and your ability to use the word confidently.
Exactly. For example, instead of learning the word negotiation in isolation, if you learn it in the context of a business discussion or a meeting, it sticks better. You also understand how it fits into the broader conversation, which improves your fluency.
And it's not just about learning single words. Phrases, idioms, and collocations are just as important. Learning these chunks of language helps you sound more natural when you speak, and that adds to your overall confidence.
That's so true. So listeners, whenever you come across new words, try to learn them in context. Read sentences, watch videos, or listen to podcasts like this one. It will help you not only expand your vocabulary, but also boost your fluency.
Jennifer, I often hear learners say they don't have anyone to practice English with. What would you suggest for those situations?
That's a good question, Thomas. If you don't have a language partner or group, one great way to practice speaking is to do it alone. You can talk to yourself in English, describe what you're doing throughout the day, or even summarize things you've read or heard. It might feel strange at first, but it's incredibly effective.
I agree, speaking out loud, even when you're alone, is a powerful tool. It helps you get used to forming sentences, using new vocabulary, and practicing pronunciation without the pressure of a conversation. Plus, it builds your fluency and confidence.
Exactly. You can also record yourself speaking and listen back. That way, you can spot areas where you can improve, like your pronunciation or the flow of your sentences. It's a simple, yet very effective way to practice.
That's a great tip, Jennifer. So listeners, don't let the lack of a speaking partner hold you back. Speak to yourself in English as much as possible. You'll see a big difference in your confidence and fluency over time.
Thomas, I know we've mentioned language partners and speaking alone, but what about online resources? There are so many great tools out there that can help learners improve their speaking confidence. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. There are countless apps, websites, and online courses designed to help learners practice speaking. You can join virtual language exchanges, take part in online discussions, or use apps that simulate conversations. The internet really opens up so many possibilities for practice.
Yes, and the best part is that you can find resources that match your level and interests. Whether it's a language learning app, an online tutor, or a forum where you can chat with other learners, these tools are great for building confidence because you can practice at your own pace.
And let's not forget podcasts like this one. Listening to English conversations can help you get used to the natural flow of the language. It can also inspire you to try new phrases or approaches when you're speaking.
Exactly. So, listeners, take advantage of all the online resources available. The more you practice with these tools, the more confident you'll become in speaking English.
Jennifer, I think setting realistic goals is another important aspect of building confidence. If learners set goals that are too high, they might feel discouraged when they don't reach them. What are your thoughts on that?
That's so true, Thomas. It's important to set small, achievable goals that you can work towards over time. For example, instead of aiming to be fluent in a few months, you could set a goal to have a 5-minute conversation in English by the end of the week. Achieving these smaller goals builds your confidence step by step.
Yes, and once you reach one goal, you can set the next one a little higher. Maybe the next step is having a 10-minute conversation or using a new set of vocabulary words. Gradually, as you hit these milestones, your confidence will grow, and so will your fluency.
Exactly. And don't forget to celebrate your progress along the way. Each small win is a sign that you're improving, and it's important to acknowledge that. It keeps you motivated and reminds you that you're on the right track.
I couldn't agree more. So, listeners, set realistic goals and take things one step at a time. Every goal you achieve will boost your confidence and bring you closer to fluency.
Thomas, we've talked a lot about different ways to improve speaking confidence, but I think one of the most effective things learners can do is develop a regular routine for speaking practice. What do you think?
Oh, definitely. Consistency is key. If you practice speaking just once in a while, it's hard to see real progress. But if you make it part of your daily or weekly routine, even for just a few minutes a day, your confidence and fluency will improve significantly over time.
Exactly. And the routine doesn't have to be complicated. You can spend 10 minutes each day speaking to yourself, practicing with a language partner, or using an app. The important thing is to keep it regular, so it becomes a habit.
Yes, and when it becomes a habit, speaking English will start to feel more natural and less stressful. You'll gain more confidence because you'll be using the language consistently rather than just on occasion.
Absolutely. So listeners, try to develop a routine that works for you. Whether it's daily, a few times a week, or whatever fits your schedule, the more consistently you practice, the more confident you'll become in speaking English. Thomas, one of the biggest challenges learners face is the fear of making mistakes when speaking English. What advice would you give to those who feel nervous about making errors?
I think the first thing to remember is that mistakes are a natural part of learning any language. In fact, making mistakes is one of the best ways to improve because it shows you what you need to work on. If you don't make mistakes, you're not pushing yourself enough.
Exactly. Mistakes are proof that you're trying. And most people, especially native speakers, understand that learning a language is hard. They'll appreciate the effort you're making and won't judge you for any errors.
That's such a good point. Also, the more you practice, the less frequent those mistakes will become. So rather than fearing them, see mistakes as opportunities for growth. Every mistake you correct brings you one step closer to fluency.
Right, so listeners, don't let the fear of making mistakes hold you back. Speak up, even if you're not 100% sure about what you're saying. The more you practice, the more confident and accurate you'll become.
Jennifer, another thing that can sometimes make learners feel less confident is the variety of English accents out there. There's British English, American English, Australian English, just to name a few. How do you think learners can navigate these differences?
That's a great question, Thomas. I think it's important for learners to understand that there's no correct accent. English is spoken in so many parts of the world, and each region has its own way of speaking. What's important is understanding and being understood.
Exactly. I always tell learners that while it's useful to get used to different accents, they shouldn't feel pressured to adopt a specific one. As long as you're clear and can communicate effectively, that's what matters most.
Yes, and listening to different accents can actually be a fun part of learning. You can watch movies, listen to podcasts, or speak with people from different regions. The more you expose yourself to different accents, the easier it will be to understand and communicate with a variety of English speakers.
That's so true. And listeners, don't worry too much about your own accent either. Focus on being clear and confident when you speak. Accents are part of what makes each of us unique, so embrace yours.
Speaking of accents, Thomas, I think learners sometimes feel stressed about perfecting their pronunciation. What would you say to those who feel like they need to sound perfect when speaking English?
I'd say that striving for perfect pronunciation can actually be counterproductive. Of course, pronunciation is important, but it doesn't have to be flawless for you to be understood. The key is clarity, making sure that the listener can understand what you're saying.
Exactly. If you focus too much on sounding perfect, you might end up feeling self-conscious or hesitant to speak at all. Instead, focus on improving your pronunciation gradually. You can work on specific sounds that are challenging for you, but don't aim for perfection right away.
Yes, and practice is key. The more you speak, the more natural your pronunciation will become over time. You can also listen to native speakers and mimic how they say certain words, but always keep in mind that your goal is to be understood, not perfect.
Absolutely. So listeners, work on your pronunciation, but don't stress about being perfect. Focus on speaking clearly and confidently, and your pronunciation will improve naturally over time.
Jennifer, another thing that can really help learners improve their speaking confidence is asking for feedback. What do you think about that approach?
I think asking for feedback is an excellent idea, Thomas. When someone points out specific areas where you can improve, it gives you clear direction on what to work on. Whether it's pronunciation, grammar, or fluency, constructive feedback is invaluable.
Yes, and it's important to ask for feedback from someone who can provide helpful insights, like a teacher, tutor, or even a native speaker. Sometimes, friends or language partners can also offer useful suggestions. The key is to view feedback as an opportunity to grow, not as criticism.
Exactly. And if you don't have anyone to give you feedback, you can also listen to yourself speak by recording your voice. You might notice patterns or areas that you can improve on when you listen to yourself objectively.
That's a great tip. So, listeners, don't be afraid to ask for feedback. It's one of the best ways to identify what you're doing well and where you can improve. And remember, every bit of feedback helps you become a more confident English speaker.
Thomas, do you think it's helpful for learners to observe how native speakers communicate in order to improve their own speaking confidence?
Absolutely. Jennifer, watching and listening to native speakers can give learners a sense of how natural conversations flow. You can pick up on the rhythm, intonation, and common phrases that native speakers use, which can help you feel more confident when you're speaking.
Yes, and you don't even have to be in a native-speaking country to do that. You can watch movies, listen to podcasts, or join online communities where native speakers are interacting. These are great ways to observe real, everyday language in use.
And the more you're exposed to natural English conversations, the more comfortable you'll feel using the language yourself. It's all about familiarizing yourself with how native speakers communicate so that you can apply it to your own speaking.
Exactly. So listeners, make it a habit to observe native speakers whenever you can. It's one of the best ways to learn how to speak English more confidently and naturally.
Jennifer, one thing we haven't touched on yet is how body language and nonverbal cues play a role in communication. How important do you think they are for building speaking confidence?
I think they're incredibly important, Thomas. Even if you're not 100% confident with your words, using positive body language like making eye contact, nodding, and using hand gestures can enhance your communication. It shows that you're engaged in the conversation and can even help convey meaning when words are tricky.
Yes, nonverbal cues can really support what you're saying and give you a confidence boost. For example, standing or sitting up straight can make you feel more confident, which in turn can make your speech more fluent.
Exactly. And even when you're unsure of a word or phrase, maintaining positive body language can help keep the conversation flowing. It shows that you're present and interested, which can make up for any language gaps.
Absolutely. So listeners, don't underestimate the power of body language. Use it to reinforce your communication and build confidence in your English conversations.
Thomas, before we wrap up, I think it's important to talk about staying motivated on the language learning journey. Confidence doesn't come overnight, and it's easy to get discouraged. What do you think?
I agree, Jennifer. Staying motivated is crucial, especially during the times when you feel like you're not making progress. It's important to remind yourself why you're learning English in the first place, whether it's for a job, travel, or personal growth. Keeping that in mind can help you stay focused and confident.
Yes, and celebrating small victories along the way is also key. Each new word you learn, each conversation you have, and each improvement you make is a step toward fluency. Acknowledging those milestones will keep you motivated.
That's a great point. And remember, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. Progress might feel slow at times, but as long as you keep practicing consistently, your confidence will grow.
Absolutely. So listeners, stay motivated, keep practicing, and don't be afraid to celebrate your progress. Confidence will come with time, and every step you take brings you closer to your goal. Thomas, another key aspect of speaking English confidently is having a solid vocabulary. How can learners work on expanding their vocabulary without feeling overwhelmed?
That's a great question, Jennifer. I always recommend learners start by focusing on practical vocabulary, the words and phrases they're most likely to use in everyday conversations. This makes learning more relevant and less overwhelming. If you can confidently use words that are part of your daily life, you'll feel more prepared in conversations.
I agree. It's also helpful to learn vocabulary in context rather than in isolation. For example, when you learn a new word, try to use it in a sentence or in a conversation right away. This helps you remember it better and understand how it's used naturally.
Exactly. Another tip is to group related words together. For instance, if you're learning about food, you can focus on all the vocabulary related to meals, ingredients, and cooking methods. It helps to create connections between the words, making it easier to recall them when needed.
Yes, and for those of you listening, don't rush the process. Building a strong vocabulary takes time. But the more words you know, the more confident you'll feel when expressing yourself in English.
That's right. So focus on practical words, use them in context, and build your vocabulary step by step. It's one of the best ways to boost your speaking confidence over time. Jennifer, we often talk about vocabulary and grammar, but another important factor in speaking confidently is mastering intonation and stress. How can learners work on that?
Yes, intonation and stress are crucial, Thomas. Intonation refers to the rise and fall of your voice when you speak, while stress is about emphasizing certain words in a sentence. Together, they help convey meaning and emotion, and mastering them can make you sound more natural in English.
Exactly. For example, if you say, "I didn't say he stole the money," the meaning changes depending on which word you stress. Practicing this will not only help learners sound more fluent, but also make their communication clearer.
Yes, and a great way to practice is by listening to native speakers and paying attention to how they use intonation and stress. You can mimic their speech patterns and gradually incorporate them into your own speaking. It's almost like adding a rhythm to your speech, making it more engaging.
That's a great tip. And learners, don't worry if you don't get it perfect right away. Intonation and stress take time to master, but practicing them will definitely make you feel more confident and natural when speaking English.
Absolutely. So listeners, start paying attention to intonation and stress when you listen to English. It's a subtle but powerful way to improve your speaking confidence. Thomas, one piece of advice I often give to learners is to start thinking in English rather than translating from their native language. Do you think this helps with confidence?
Definitely, Jennifer. When you think in English, it speeds up your ability to respond in conversations. You don't have to pause to translate, which makes you sound more fluent and confident. It also helps you to use more natural sentence structures.
Exactly. It might feel difficult at first, but learners can start small. For example, they can try thinking in English about everyday things, what they're going to eat for lunch, what they need to do today. Gradually, it becomes a habit, and speaking English feels less like an effort.
Yes, and it's all about immersing yourself in the language. The more you surround yourself with English, whether through reading, listening to podcasts, or speaking with others, the easier it will become to think in English.
Absolutely. So to all of our listeners, try to make thinking in English a daily habit. It's a great way to boost your confidence and become more fluent in conversations.
Jennifer, speaking of immersion, practicing with a language partner can also do wonders for building confidence. What's your take on that?
I think it's one of the best ways to improve, Thomas. Having a language partner gives learners a chance to practice speaking in a safe, supportive environment. They can experiment with new vocabulary, try out different phrases, and even work on their pronunciation without feeling too pressured.
Exactly. And language partners can give you real-time feedback, which is invaluable. They can point out any mistakes or areas for improvement, and you can do the same for them. It's a win-win situation for both partners.
Yes, and if you can find a native speaker or someone who's more advanced, that's even better. But even practicing with other learners can help build confidence. The key is to practice regularly and keep the conversation flowing.
I completely agree. So listeners, if you don't have a language partner yet, try to find one. There are many online platforms where you can connect with English learners and speakers. The more you practice, the more confident you'll feel in real-life situations.
That's right. It's all about consistent practice and support. A language partner can be a great motivator on your journey to speaking English more confidently. Thomas, have you ever suggested reading aloud as a way to improve fluency? I find that it's a really effective technique for building speaking confidence.
Yes, Jennifer, I recommend it all the time. Reading aloud helps learners practice pronunciation, intonation, and fluency all at once. It's a way to get comfortable forming sentences and hearing how they sound without the pressure of a live conversation.
Exactly. And learners can choose materials that interest them, like articles, stories, or even dialogue from a movie. The more they read aloud, the more natural it will feel to speak in English.
Yes, and you don't even need a partner for this. You can practice alone at home. The key is to speak clearly and try to use the same tone and pace you would in a conversation. It really helps boost both fluency and confidence over time.
Absolutely. So listeners, if you haven't tried it yet, start reading aloud. It's a simple but powerful way to improve your speaking confidence. Thomas, one thing that holds learners back from speaking confidently is the fear of making mistakes. How can we help them overcome this fear?
That's a very common issue, Jennifer. I always tell learners that mistakes are a natural part of the learning process. In fact, they're one of the best ways to improve. The important thing is to keep speaking, even if you're unsure about some words or grammar. Over time, your confidence will grow.
Yes, and sometimes learners put too much pressure on themselves to speak perfectly. But no one speaks perfectly all the time, not even native speakers. The key is to focus on communicating your message. If you can get your point across, that's a success.
Exactly, and you learn from each mistake. Each time you realize something wasn't quite right, it sticks in your memory and you improve the next time. So rather than fearing mistakes, embrace them as opportunities to learn.
That's such an important point. And to our listeners, remember, the more you speak, the fewer mistakes you'll make over time. So don't let the fear of making a mistake stop you from practicing your English.
Absolutely. Confidence comes from doing, not from waiting until you're perfect. So keep speaking and you'll see how quickly you improve. Jennifer, one way to build confidence is to incorporate English into everyday situations. How can learners practice speaking without needing a formal setting?
Great question, Thomas. There are so many opportunities to practice speaking English in everyday life. For example, learners can talk to themselves in English when they're doing simple tasks like cooking or driving. It may sound funny, but it's a great way to get comfortable forming sentences.
Yes, I've heard of that technique, and it really works. Another way is to describe what you see around you in English. If you're walking in a park, you can practice describing the scenery or talking about your day. It helps keep your mind thinking in English, which builds fluency.
Exactly. And learners can also use technology to their advantage. They can change the language settings on their devices to English or try ordering food online in English. These small steps help learners get used to using English in practical, everyday situations.
That's a fantastic tip. It's all about creating an immersive environment, even if you're not in an English-speaking country. The more you engage with English in your daily routine, the more confident you'll become.
Absolutely. So listeners, find ways to bring English into your everyday life. It doesn't have to be formal. You can practice anywhere, anytime. Thomas, staying motivated is essential for learning any language. How can learners stay motivated, especially when they feel like they're not making progress?
Motivation can definitely be a challenge, Jennifer. I think one of the best ways to stay motivated is to set small, achievable goals. Rather than focusing on becoming fluent overnight, learners can set goals like learning 5 new words a day or practicing speaking for 10 minutes. These small wins help build momentum.
Yes, I agree. And it's also helpful to celebrate those small victories. Maybe you had a conversation in English at work or understood a podcast without subtitles. Those are big achievements. Acknowledging your progress, no matter how small, keeps you motivated.
Exactly. Another tip is to keep learning fun. Instead of only using textbooks, learners can watch English movies, listen to music, or play language games. When learning is enjoyable, it's much easier to stay motivated.
Absolutely. And I'd also suggest surrounding yourself with positive influences. Join an online community of English learners, watch motivational videos, or listen to podcasts where you can hear other learners share their stories.
Absolutely. And I'd also suggest surrounding yourself with positive influences. Join an online community of English learners, watch motivational videos, or listen to podcasts where you can hear other learners share their stories. That's a great idea. So, listeners, stay focused on your goals, celebrate your progress, and make learning enjoyable. With consistency and the right mindset, your confidence and skills will continue to grow.
Thomas, podcasts like ours can be an excellent tool for improving pronunciation. What advice do you have for learners who want to use podcasts to work on their pronunciation?
Podcasts are great for that, Jennifer. One technique I suggest is shadowing, where learners listen to a sentence or phrase and then repeat it immediately, trying to match the speaker's pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm as closely as possible.
Yes, shadowing is a fantastic way to improve pronunciation. It forces you to listen closely to how native speakers form sounds and sentences. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel.
Exactly. And another tip is to focus on one aspect at a time. For example, one day, you might focus on how to pronounce certain vowels, and the next day, you might work on your intonation or stress patterns. Breaking it down makes it less overwhelming.
That's a great approach. And learners can also record themselves speaking and then compare their pronunciation to what they hear on the podcast. It's a useful way to catch any areas that need improvement.
Yes, and remember, pronunciation takes time to develop, so be patient with yourself. The more you listen and practice, the better you'll get.
Absolutely. So listeners, use podcasts to improve your pronunciation, and don't forget to practice consistently. It's all part of the journey to becoming a confident English speaker.
Jennifer, we've talked about a lot of strategies today, but one area where learners can really boost their confidence is small talk. Why is small talk such an important skill for building speaking confidence?
Small talk is crucial because it's often the first step in a conversation. Whether you're at work, meeting new people, or just interacting socially, small talk is a way to break the ice. And the more comfortable you are with it, the more confident you'll feel in all types of conversations.
Yes, and small talk doesn't have to be complicated. It's often about simple topics like the weather, weekend plans, or recent news. The key is to keep the conversation flowing and show interest in what the other person is saying.
Exactly. And small talk is also a great opportunity to practice your speaking skills in a low-pressure situation. You don't need to have deep knowledge of a topic. You just need to engage and respond naturally.
That's right. So learners, don't shy away from small talk. Use it as a chance to practice speaking and to build your confidence. The more you do it, the easier it will become.
Absolutely. So next time you're in a situation where small talk is appropriate, go for it. It's a great way to sharpen your English skills and build confidence in everyday interactions. Thomas, another key area where learners can boost their confidence is through group conversations. How can participating in group discussions help learners speak more confidently?
Group conversations are an excellent way to gain confidence. Jennifer, in a group, you have the chance to listen to others, respond, and even learn from their speaking styles. You're not carrying the conversation alone, which can take some pressure off, making it a bit easier to join in and speak up.
Exactly. And in a group setting, there's often a mix of topics and opinions, which can give learners more opportunities to practice speaking on different subjects. They also learn how to engage with multiple people, which helps improve not just fluency, but also social and listening skills.
That's a great point. Group discussions also help with turn-taking, something that's crucial in conversation. Learning when to jump in, how to interrupt politely, or how to ask for clarification, all of this builds confidence because you're practicing real-life communication.
Yes, and it's important to remember that in group conversations, there's no pressure to be perfect. Mistakes are normal, and often, the more relaxed the environment, the easier it is to speak naturally.
So, listeners, try to engage in group conversations whenever possible, whether it's with friends, classmates, or online forums. It's a fantastic way to get comfortable speaking English in different contexts. Jennifer, one of the biggest challenges many learners face is overcoming shyness when speaking English. How can learners build the courage to speak, even if they're naturally shy?
That's such an important topic, Thomas. For shy learners, the key is to start small. It's okay to begin with one-on-one conversations with people you feel comfortable with, like a language partner or a friend. Over time, as you become more comfortable, you can gradually move to larger groups or more formal settings.
Absolutely. And it's important to realize that many people feel shy or nervous when speaking a new language. It's completely normal. The more you put yourself out there, the easier it gets. Even small successes like ordering food in English or asking for directions can give you a big confidence boost.
Yes, and another tip is to remind yourself that people are generally supportive when someone is trying to learn their language. Most people won't mind if you make a mistake, they'll appreciate the effort. Knowing this can help reduce the pressure you feel when speaking.
That's right, and for shy learners, it can also help to prepare a few phrases or sentences before a conversation. If you know you're going to a place where you'll need to speak English, having a mental script can make you feel more confident.
Absolutely. So for all listeners who might feel shy, remember, start small, build on your successes, and know that everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is to keep practicing and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And that wraps up our episode on how to speak English more confidently. We hope these tips and strategies will help you feel more comfortable and fluent in your conversations.
Remember, building confidence takes time and practice, but every step you take is a step closer to mastering English. Keep engaging with others and don't hesitate to put yourself out there.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to hearing about your progress in speaking English confidently. Until next time.
Happy practicing, everyone!